Hi there, I'm Carla Sands, former ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark, and I'm the chair of the Foreign Policy Initiative at America First Policy Institute. I'm here at the AFPI studios, and I'm thrilled to welcome a giant, an icon of Republican politics and American politics, Newt Gingrich, the great former Speaker of the House. Newt, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, I'm honored. This is actually kind of fun to be back with you.
Well, thank you. Newt, you have written so many books about America, American politics. How many books have you written?
46.
46 books.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And of those books, like, what do you recommend, your books or other books? Because whenever I hear you speak publicly, you always talk about the books that we should read to take on important historical lessons or understand the situation that we're in at that time. And I always write down those books, and I go get them, and I read them or listen to them on, on Audible. So what I'd love to know from you is, what books should our viewers be listening to or reading today?
Well, first of all, I think it's helpful to actually deal with history because it tells you a lot about how the world works. So I would say that looking at books about the American Revolution, the founding of the country, Washington, Jefferson, and then Lincoln. I personally study Lincoln all the time because what he went through in waging a civil war and doing it really as a guy who had been a lawyer in this very small office in Springfield and then had to head up a nationwide conflict for 4 years. There's so much to learn from Lincoln. I know conservatives will be shocked, but I think if you're serious about learning politics, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was probably the best political figure of the 20th century in his knowledge, his ability to get things done. I would say this will probably surprise you, it's maybe a sign of my age. I found Theodore White's Making of the President in 1960, which was the first book he wrote of that type, really helpful, because he gave you a flavor of how America works. I'll also say, if you want to understand Washington, there's a novel by Alan Drury called Advise and Consent, which I found as Speaker of the House and as a member of the Congress very helpful in that it covers a big fight in the Senate. And Drury had been a great reporter in the Senate and really knew the Senate. And so I would say to people, if you want to understand legislative politics, Alan Drury's Advise and Consent is probably as good an introduction as you can get.
Well, thanks for that. Now, you were the Speaker of the House in the 1990s, and you created the Contract with America, Contract for America.
Yeah.
And what of that, it was revolutionary at the time. What of that bold initiative lives on today in the Congress?
Well, a lot. I mean, we had welfare reform, which was the biggest single change. We had reform of the communications laws, which made the whole internet system possible. We reformed the Food and Drug Administration. We created Medicare Advantage, which is still here today. Mm-hmm. We balanced the budget for 4 years for the only time in the last 100 years. So, and in fact, when I left office, Alan Greenspan, who was then the chairman of the Federal Reserve, gave a speech saying that they projected that we would pay off the national debt by 2009, and they were actually studying how they would manage the money supply if they had no debt. So, and my biggest advice to the congressional Republicans in the Trump administration is take a look at how we balance the budget and understand that it is doable. It changes things dramatically. It saves huge amounts of money, and it strengthens the country in just so many different ways. And it's clearly doable because we did it.
100%. So you've been both a visionary and a strategist. How does the vision and the strategies that you set in place when you were in power, and as you have informed leaders throughout the decades, how is that impacting conservative thought today?
Well, candidly, I'm not totally sure. I think Speaker Johnson clearly operates within a framework that we created and would say so, has said so publicly. Look, the key to me, and I learned this from Reagan, it's not unique to Newt Gingrich, you start with the American people. And then Trump understands this. I mean, the American people talk to themselves every day. They develop opinions, and then they develop very firm principles. And a political system which starts from the people and represents the people, what Lincoln meant when he said, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. If you take that seriously, it tells you about 90% of what you need to know. And so I hope that some of that spirit is both in the Trump administration and in the House and Senate Republicans, because I think it's the foundation for a long-term majority.
100%. And as a historian, which you certainly are, and a leader, how do you see what's happening today? How will that reshape America over the next 50 years?
Well, we are in the middle of the largest restructuring of the American political system since Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, for 90 years, the Roosevelt model dominated politics, dominated the bureaucracy, dominated the news media. Reagan bruised it, but he didn't really break it. Mm-hmm. Trump, for the first time, has really fundamentally, profoundly broken up the liberal establishment in a way which is historically amazing. And if he can win the 26th off-year election and sustain the momentum, then I think we will have ended the Roosevelt era and entered a totally different, much more dynamic, much more entrepreneurial, much more productive system than the one that we were trapped in.
100%. We can see this revolution happening to the benefit of the American people. It is really exciting. Now, we've lost an American, I would say, hero, icon, certainly of the conservative world, one of the most famous men in the world. He was just in South Korea and the UK at Oxford, Charlie Kirk, our first American Christian martyr, the first political assassination since 1968. The whole world has responded with marches and peaceful protests around his death, asking for their rights back. How do you see his passing reshaping America and our constitutional freedoms?
Well, first of all, Charlie Kirk was a remarkable, precocious leader, starting at about 16 years of age, and had created a nationwide movement. We have a very poignant picture of Charlie and me doing his show at the convention, talking about the assassination attempt on President Trump. We were both very emotional about it. I think that, first of all, he's irreplaceable. He had a unique capacity to both articulate conservatism and engage people in debate in ways that almost nobody else could match. So I think in that sense, we have to really wonder, how do we fill the vacuum that heroic and remarkable leader left behind? Second, I think it's the final step in galvanizing and understanding that the hard left is really violent. I think the president's move, for example, on declaring that Antifa is a terrorist organization, something which I think should have been done 10 years ago, is going to lead to very profound change as we come to understand who is funded to Antifa, who organizes it. I mean, this is a nationwide, violent organization. And I think we're going to find that across the very hard left, there is a culture of seeing violence as a legitimate political activity that we will probably have to basically break over the next 2 or 3 years. And Charlie's death will have served, I think, as a catalyst for millions of people to say that's it. That we now understand how randomly dangerous this is for everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can be sitting on a college campus in Utah and get killed, it could happen to all of us. And frankly, it was compounded because of the horrendous stabbing death of the Ukrainian refugee who was minding her own business on the way home from work, sitting on a train. When you look at the 4-minute video, not a single person on the train tried to help her, tried to stop the killer, or even called 911. And it was a horrendous reminder of how much our social community has broken down and our sense of caring about each other has broken down.
it makes me think of that tragic occurrence on a subway car with Daniel Penny.
Yes.
And how he came to the aid of people in a similar situation. And he was so demonized, vilified, charged. And,
Right.
We need our young men to step up and to protect people
That's
who
right.
are weaker. That little tiny young woman from Ukraine, I mean, if she was 100 pounds, I'd be shocked. She was just so vulnerable. And to see that happen and to see the harshness from the left, again, not just violence, but also vocal hatred of the weak and the meek. It's really, and then even the negative talk around Charlie Kirk's death. It's really
right.
shocking. Now you've been a historian of civilization. You've been on the front end, I would say, of a real movement in the 20th and now 21st century. How do you think all of these things that are occurring around us are going to reshape our civilization, say, for the next 50 years? If you could have a crystal ball, because you have a really good sense of the United States and the people.
Well, look, I'm an optimist. I think we're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary. In fact, I was telling Callista that this morning watching the president with the king, there was a point where they're playing the Star Spangled Banner, which of course is a song about a British attack on an American fort. And I thought there was something just grandly ironic about all this.
Yes.
I think in the long run, we're going to sort through these problems. We're going to establish a new standard of civility. We are going to be much tougher on people who are mentally ill or who are physically dangerous. We're not going to have multiple felonies walking around the street. And I think from out of all that, we'll become a freer and a safer and a more productive country. But it's probably a 10-year project. I mean, this is we spent 90 years decaying in the Rooseveltian system, and it just got, in the last 10 or 12, really with Obama and Biden. I mean, Obama was a major factor in creating a much more racist and much more dangerous America. And Biden, of course, was essentially Obama's third term. So I think we're now going to dig ourselves out of that, and I think that the country, which has already strongly rallied on controlling the border, is going to be very supportive of eliminating the danger of violence in our neighborhoods.
I 100% agree with you, because I don't think you can have civil society. You can't have civilization without safe streets, right? Where a woman can walk on the sidewalk and not be afraid that someone in a tent next to her is going to attack her.
That's right.
And that certainly happens in city streets across America every day. And it wasn't Ronald Reagan that caused that. That came before him. People blame him for the unhousing and uninstitutionalizing of these people. It was not him. That's a false story that the left cooked up. But if you were talking to young conservatives today, what do you think you would ask them to dedicate their lives to achieving, to build our nation and to create a society where their children can thrive and have the same liberties we do? What would you tell them to dedicate their lives to doing?
I think a golden age is possible, and I think that what I would say is we are on the edge of so many different scientific and technological breakthroughs that they should look for how they can find solutions. I just did an article about moving from disabilities to capabilities, because we have so many new technologies that can help people who historically we thought of as disabled, but in fact you can support, whether it's their physical or their mental situation. You can dramatically improve their lives with the science and the technologies coming down the road. So I look at, across the board, whether it's moving into space in a huge way, or it's developing an ability. For example, we should be able to develop on your cell phone a learning system so that if you happen to go to a really terrible school system and you graduated not knowing anything, you now have a chance to interface and learn in a way that empowers every American to dramatically improve their lives. And so I think there are a lot of positive things coming down the road. And I would say to young people today, you are right at the edge of an age of invention, where you have the chance to make this country stronger, safer, more prosperous, and freer. But it requires you to decide to go out and help invent the future as opposed to complaining about it.
I think that's brilliant, and I think it's inspiring to young people who will watch this video. Now, my final question to you is, you've overseen political realignments, you've overseen, in your time, how do you see this time of political realignment? Do you think this is what's happening, and how do you see it happening under President Trump, and where do you think it'll go?
Well, I follow a guy named Seth Keshel, who is the leading student of voter registration in the United States. And he looks at every county and every precinct. And he said, we've now had about 1,500,000 people swing from Democrat to Republican since the election. And it was actually accelerating last week with the assassination of Charlie Kirk actually led to, for example, in Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, about 800 people switched from Democrat to Republican just in response to the assassination. And that's continuing. So I would say that what you see happening is a big government socialist Democratic Party with weird values drives people away. A Republican Party which is trying to rebuild the economy, rebuild national security, control our borders, stop crime, actually attracts people. So you have two different things going on at the same time. We are attracting people, and they are driving people away. And that does make it possible that 2026 will in fact be a remarkable moment of realignment where we gain seats in the House and Senate, and where the country says, yes, that's the direction we want to go in, and repudiates the kind of big government socialism that's increasingly the dominant system in the Democratic Party.
So enlightening. Thank you so much, Speaker Gingrich, for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
Glad to do it.
Thanks.